Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion with legal contracts. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss the elements necessary in a legal contract and explain what would make a contract void or voidable. Describe the different types of contracts and concepts used in handling disputes. So some of the requirements of a legal contract, there's 4 necessary elements. First is the offer and acceptance, consideration given, intention by the parties to be legally bound, and that they are both competent. So in a property liability insurance, the offer is the applicant requesting insurance, and the acceptance is the agent typically accepting on behalf of the insurance company. In life insurance, the agent does not usually have the power to bind the insurance company. The usual procedure is the applicant fills out the application, pays the first premium, and receives a conditional receipt, also known as a binding receipt. On that conditional receipt, if when underwriting proceeds, you have the examination, medical records, etc., that it is found this is an acceptable risk, the coverage will be back to the date of the application. If it's found that this is not an acceptable risk, there will be a declination letter that goes out saying this is not an acceptable risk and we will not do a policy. So continuing on this slide here, the procedure is the application, paying the premium and receiving the receipt, and then the application, applicant, if found insurable according to the insurer's normal underwriting standards, the life insurance becomes effective as the date of the application, which is what we just talked about. Actually, going back real quick, on that slide there is another option that's not mentioned. It's called non-binding, where no money is taken by the client. The contract is not completed, underwriting does proceed, and if found acceptable to the company, an offer is made to the applicant for a given rate level, and coverage would be effective when money is taken and the policy bound at that point. And, well, as we just talked about, if the applicant does not pay the first premium when the application is filled out, the policy becomes effective when the contract is delivered. So again, that's called non-binding situation. A couple of different types of authority here. We have express authority, authority that is specifically granted to the agent. Implied authority is incidental authority required or reasonably necessary to execute the express authority. And apparent authority, authority arising out of the public's reasonable expectations. So on the topic of apparent authority, if a client comes in to an agent, pays the premium, and completes an application for their auto insurance, for example, and the agent fails to submit the application, and the client has an accident, well, the public's reasonable expectation is that they paid the money, they expected that they'd be covered. The agent's error failed to complete the contract, so that coverage would be extended in that situation. So when we talk about consideration in a contract, this requirement refers to the value each party gives to the other. The insured's consideration is the payment of premium, plus an agreement to abide by the conditions specified in the policy. And on the insurer's side, the promise to do certain things is specified in the contract. So, for example, on life, if the client dies, they're going to pay. Example of homeowner's insurance, if the home is damaged by fire, they're going to pay, and all the applicable endorsements to not only rebuild the house but bring it back up to replacement cost with current code would also be the insurer's consideration in that example. Competent parties. On this, both parties must be legally competent. So for example, if a client had advanced Alzheimer's and they entered a contract, that contract could be voidable because that person is not mentally competent to proceed. Other types of mental issues could be bipolar issues, where someone is not in their right mind, so to speak, whereas otherwise it'd be controlled by medication. Brain injuries from trauma. So there's a number of factors that go into that, but both parties must be legally competent. And now, a contract can be void or voidable if it was shown that there was a legal purpose, incapacity, misrepresentation, mistakes, or undue influence. So let's go to a legal purpose. You cannot go and hire someone to kill someone and agree to pay them money, because that sounds like a contract. You perform this, I pay you that. But since the purpose is illegal, that is not a enforceable contract. Incapacity, well, that was the prior slide. We talked about mental issues, could be or no mental illness where there's drug or alcohol use involved and the person was intoxicated. Misrepresentation. So in life insurance, for example, if I had cancer and I lied to the insurance company saying I was perfectly healthy, that is a misrepresentation. Mistakes, that could be the agent making a mistake, where they accidentally check the wrong box for gender. They put female instead of male, or they write down the wrong age by accident. They put age 64 instead of age 62. That would be a mistake that the insurance company would adjust for, but they would most likely execute whatever promise was made in that contract, just adjusting for the mistake. And undue influence, when someone is coercing you, threatening you, if you don't sign this contract, we're going to do something bad to you. That would be undue influence. So on the void side, a contract that is entirely without legal effect and therefore unenforceable by either party. An avoidable contract is a contract that can be affirmed or rejected at the option of one of the parties but is binding on the other party. We talked about legal purpose already using the example of murder for hire. Misrepresentation, we just mentioned that too. If a client misrepresents material facts. In life insurance, I mentioned if someone had cancer and lied about it. On property casualty, if someone said they didn't have any tickets but in fact they had 3. So a couple examples there. Now we're going to get into a few different types of contracts. The first being a unilateral contract, where one party, the insurer, makes a legally enforceable promise. We have a personal contract. The contract is between the policy owner and the insurer. A conditional contract, where the insurer's obligation to pay a claim depends on whether the insured or the beneficiary has complied with all the conditions. So, conditional example, we will pay on an auto theft, but you have to file a police report. So, we have contracts of adhesion, where the policy owner ordinarily must accept the entire contract with all of its terms and conditions as prepared by the insurer. If there's any ambiguity in a contract of adhesion, that is construed against the maker, the insurance company. So, again, so if there is an error, again, it goes against the maker on that. We have aleatory contracts, a contract where the values exchanged are not necessarily equal. Let's take the value of homeowners coverage, where someone pays $800 for their annual premium for their house, and the home burns down, and they receive several $100,000 of benefit. Those are unequal values, but again, that's the nature of the contract. The insurer promises to pay if an event happens, and the dollars will never be even on that. We have contracts of utmost good faith. It's partly due to the fact the insurance contract is aleatory. The insurer and insured must act in the utmost of good faith. So, the insured must pay the premium and meet the conditions and be truthful in the underwriting process, and the insurance company must keep their promise and pay out when a loss happens. Some other contractual concepts. We have warranties. When the applicant's representation are made part of the insurance contract, usually by physical attachment to the policy, they become warranties. Again, real-life example on that, life insurance. Typically, you will see the application that was filled out by the agent physically attached to the contract when the contract is issued. So that is a warranty at that point. Concealment, that is failure by one party to a contract to affirmatively disclose to the other party all the important facts, their exclusive knowledge of the first party. So concealment and misrepresentation can go fairly close together. Misrepresentation is when I intentionally make a statement lying about my health condition to a life insurer. Concealment is where I just fail to tell them the relevant data that I should have otherwise done. We have waiver, and that's the relinquishment of a known right, and closely related to waiver is a consequence, which is estoppel. It's the admission or declaration by which a person is prevented from proving contrary. So let's talk about waiver and estoppel for a moment. As an agent, if I want to favor a client and I agree to rebate back my commission to them because I like this client and I want to earn their business. Well, by doing that, I am stopping myself from not doing that with other clients. Stated another way, if I do it for one, I must do it for all. I can't change my path. So it's an important concept, especially in claims, waiver and estoppel. We also have the parole evidence rule, and that is when parties to a contract have committed to their agreement in writing, the written contract is presumed to contain the entire agreement between parties and cannot be modified or changed by oral evidence. So again, let's go back to the life insurance contract. If the application is accepted by the insurer, it's attached as a warranty to that contract, it's an element of it. If something comes along later that would, one party's requesting a change, for example, it cannot happen. When that contract was issued, the entire agreement is between the two parties. So in summary, we've talked about some of the elements necessary in a legal contract, as well as what would make a contract void or voidable, and a brief discussion of different types of contracts and concepts used in handling disputes. Thanks for your time.